Hello there. Welcome to Now Tell Us. At Now Tell Us is where we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and inspire us, they come and educate us on something. And always we are having great guests. Especially today, we have a very great guest with us. And I've always thought about living with dignity. That's a good thing. If you live with dignity, you're someone who's always respected and you know yourself and you live by your principles. But then our topic today is dying with dignity. And we're going to find out together what is that? What is dying with dignity? So we are going to meet our guest soon. But before we go, let me remind you our episodes are available on nowtellus.com. So if you would like to see past episodes, future episodes, you can always go to www.nowtellus.com. And we are also available on audio. That is at iTunes, Google Podcast, Spotify, Audible, name it. You'll find us there. So you can listen on the go. And now, let's go and find out what is dying with dignity. Our guest today is known as Andrea Wilson Woods, and we are going to meet her together with you. Let's go. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm good, Anthony. How are you?
I'm good too, and it's good to see you here.
Yes, that intro was amazing, by the way. I need to
Oh,
step up my game. That was really cool.
I tried, but when you're introducing someone who is significant, someone who's uh, as bright as you are, you better be good. So I need some practice. I'm excited to have you here, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Yes, and it's such an honor that you took your time. We have so much to cover in such a short time, so I won't take much time. I just want to know, where are you?
I am in Birmingham, Alabama, but I am
Oh,
so jealous because you need to tell everyone where you are because that's my bucket list, man.
yes, I'm in Athens, Greece. Yes.
Oh, it's like
And
right
then
below Italy. It's like Italy, Greece, Italy, Greece.
yes, yes, yes. And you mentioned Birmingham, Alabama. I always hear that those words in the famous speech. You know the speech, and I say, oh, I need to go to that place, Birmingham, Alabama.
Really? Well, it
Yeah.
we're a good foodie town now, so it's okay. It's alright. I've
Mhm.
been here 8 years, almost 8 years.
Okay, that's good. Okay, we also have guests who are watching us. So I'd like to thank each and every guest who's here watching us. We appreciate you. We love you, and we like the time that you spend with us being of benefit to you. So we really appreciate you. We have Stratos Sotiriu. Hi, Strato. Oh, Sotiriu is watching us. He's
Hello.
also from Greece. We thank you. And anyone out there who's watching us, please comment, please ask questions, please give us feedback. We appreciate, and that's why we are here for you, because we have someone to tell us. We are here to listen. So let's go ahead. Our topic today is dying with dignity. So we are going to dive into that. But before we get to go into that, I know that it starts from where you were born. Where were you born? Is it where you're already living in Birmingham?
No, most people don't know. I was born in Wichita, Kansas, because at the
Okay.
time, both my parents were in the Air Force. I think we lived there a total of 6 months, so I don't remember anything about Kansas at all.
Okay. Ah,
And yeah,
and
so
how
we
was it
moved.
growing up there?
Well, I didn't grow up there. We moved a lot when I was young because
I
they were
mean, oh
both
yeah,
still in the
you said
Air
that.
Force.
Uh-huh.
unlike your previous guest that I told you before you hit record that she had this amazing childhood all over the world. No, I lived in like all these hick towns all over America. So
Okay.
not very exciting, but once my parents were out of the Air Force, I primarily grew up in Arkansas. And then after my parents divorced, I moved to Birmingham, where I now live again. And I went to high school here. So
Mm-hmm.
all over the southeast of the US.
Mm. And how was high school? I always wish to go back to high school. It was interesting, and I hope for it was for
What?
you.
Said no one ever. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I miss those days. I miss those days.
I I do not, but to be fair, I did go to a pretty amazing high school. It was a charter performing arts school. And so I was a dance major. So in addition to really rigorous academics, I also had 2 to 3 ballet classes a day. So I do credit my high school for teaching me discipline.
Mm. Yeah, it's good. It's somewhere. It's a place that shapes us. It shapes us and our future, because we get to learn new things. We get to experience, even though some of them we may not like you didn't like, but then they are important for us.
Right.
And then you had a sister. And
Yeah.
how many other people did you? I mean, how many other siblings did you have?
So I have a brother who's 3 years younger. We have the
Okay.
same mother and father. And then
Mm-hmm.
my sister was 14 years younger and she was born here in Birmingham. We have the same mother, different fathers. Her father actually died very tragically in a car accident before she was born. So she never
Oh,
knew her father.
mm-hmm. Sorry for that. And the way I introduced, I mean, by the reason that I introduced your sister is because the story that we are going to share is more about her. So
Right.
I would give you the go ahead to share as much as you want with us regarding your sister.
Sure. So,
Mhm.
like I said, my sister was born here in Birmingham. Before my 14th birthday. And so my high school years, I mean, she was always with me. And many people
Mhm.
thought I was her mother, that I was a teenage mother. And, but when I was getting ready to go to college, I really wanted to get on my own as far away from our mother as possible. And so I actually went to school in Los Angeles. I went to USC, Fight On Trojans, and I stayed in Los Angeles for my entire adult life. And so during those 4 years that I was in school, I saw my sister over the holidays. She even came to visit me one summer when she was 6 years old and stayed with me for a little while. But I didn't see her day to day. And then in December of 1994, so gosh, 28 years ago, if I'm doing my math right,
Wow.
um, she came out to visit me for what was supposed to be a 2-week Christmas vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I had graduated from university and I was living my life. And again, it was just supposed to be a 2-week holiday. And the day after Christmas, our mother called and said she didn't want to be a mother anymore, and she asked me to take custody of my sister. And my sister was 8 and I was 22 years old. And to give it a little more context, our mother had a prescription drug problem. She had been a very high functioning addict during my childhood, but about 6 months before this incident at Christmas, she had gotten caught shooting up drugs at work. And she was a nurse and she had very easy access to drugs. So she got caught shooting up morphine. She got her nursing license suspended, and her career kind of went into a free for all, and she wasn't doing very well, and she had moved my sister several times in a very short amount of time, and everything had become very unstable, and I was aware of that. And so when my mother said she wanted to give me my sister, I just said yes. And really didn't think about what the consequences were of that decision. I didn't have any idea how difficult it was going to be. And so I became my sister's guardian, and it changed the entire course of my life. I was a parent all through my 20s.
Mm. Wow. That's and before, I mean, in your you say that she used to come and visit you when you are in high school, and then when you're given custody, you're already in university. Um, she was just like any other small sis. I mean, how was she? Was she playful? Was she very serious? A very serious child?
You know, she had been going through a difficult time with our mother. Like I said, my mother had become increasingly unstable, and I had seen the effects even when I would visit for the holidays while I was still in college. I could see that my sister was becoming more withdrawn and shy, and something was going on, but I didn't know what it was. And I didn't find out until she came to live with me that a neighbor had molested her. And it was really it was horrible.
Mhm,
It was really difficult for my sister, and when she came to live with me, she did not want to live with me. I should be really clear, she had
mhm,
no desire to live with me. We were very close, but she didn't see me as a parent. She was very stubborn, very defiant, and we had this very critical moment in our relationship that happened about 4 months in, her living with me, where she threw the temper tantrum of all temper tantrums in a restaurant, so in a public place. And we're
mhm,
talking she was 8, but she threw a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old would, it was kicking, screaming, crying, it was ridiculous.
mhm,
And so we came home and she was still just acting just crazy. And I told her that that behavior wasn't acceptable.
mhm,
And so I made a false threat, a bluff, if you will. I told her that if she couldn't live by my rules in my house and respect them and act appropriately in public, that I was going to send her home. Now, what
mhm,
she didn't know at the time, there was nowhere to go. She didn't know that there was nowhere to go, that our mother did not want her. I did not share that with her. And so this was back in the day when you could call the airlines and reserve a ticket, and they held that reservation for 24 hours without even a credit card. So
mhm,
that's what I did. I called the airlines. I made a reservation for her to get on a flight the next day, and I told her to start packing her things. And it was a huge bluff. I mean, huge
mhm,
bluff.
mhm,
I didn't even have the money to pay for that ticket at the time. And so I left the room. I went into the living room and I just waited and I prayed really, and I could hear her throwing things around in the room and yelling and screaming and crying, and it was about an hour later she came out and her head was down and she wouldn't look at me and she said, "Okay." And I said, "Okay, what?" And she said, "Okay, your rules." And I was very clear. I said, "Look, here's the deal. I'm your parent first, then I'm your sister, and one day when you grow up, I hope I'm your friend." And
mhm,
she said, "Okay." And she said, "Okay, sissy." She always called me sissy. And she said, "Parent, sister, friend." And that was such a pivotal moment because it laid the foundation for our relationship going forward.
mm. And I believe that from that point on, it was a beautiful relationship. You,
Thank
mhm,
you. Yeah. I
mhm.
mean, there were challenges, lots of challenges, but,
Always
uh,
like in life,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
we, it was a very special relationship.
Okay. And then things turn around. At what point and how did they turn around?
Well, she suffered from depression when she was 12, and it was so bad that she was suicidal. So I got her into counseling right away, and that was one of the best decisions I ever made. And she kind of came out of that depression. She started high school. She kind of came into her own in high school, and it was so amazing to see. She was a 4.0 student, took honors courses, had lots of friends, had a boyfriend, and she was really thriving and
Mm,
excelling. And one day I came home, I'll never forget, Wednesday, May 16th, 2001. I walked in, and at that time I was teaching in her school district. So I typically taught from 8 to 3, and her school schedule just happened to be 7 to 2. So when I walked in the door, I usually found her at the kitchen table doing her homework because that was a rule in our house, homework
yeah.
first.
Mhm,
And instead, on that day, she was lying in the living on the living room floor, curled up in a fetal position, crying, saying that she was in pain, and this was a kid who never cried. So I knew something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to her pediatrician, and we just walked into his clinic, and he was very concerned because he saw that her abdomen was swollen, and she didn't tell me her abdomen was swollen, and I always said I was a very lucky parent because unlike her friends that wore very skimpy clothing and always got in trouble at school, my sister didn't. She always covered her body, and
Mm-hmm.
so I had no idea that there had been some swelling,
Mm-hmm.
and he was so worried, he sent us to the only hospital in Burbank to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
We go to the emergency room and they say they're gonna run a CAT scan. They wanna check to see if there's internal bleeding, and as she was being wheeled in for the CAT scan, and this gives you some insight to her very dry, witty humor, she said, "Hey, sissy, watch it be cancer." And I laughed and she laughed and I said, "Bite your tongue." And then we're waiting for the results. It's just me and her at this point. And an ER doctor comes in, and I knew whatever they had found was so much worse than what they expected because he would not look at her. You know, if you really pay attention to people's body language, you pick up on a lot. He
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't look at her. And I grabbed her hand, and he changed our lives forever with 8 words. He said, "She has tumors in her liver and lungs." And we just both burst into tears. And then he said, "We're not equipped to handle the situation because this hospital only saw adult patients. And even though she had just turned 15, technically she was a pediatric patient." He said that they had arranged for a transfer to Children's Hospital Los Angeles and that he was sorry. And he walked out. And that was day one of her 147-day cancer journey. I mean, that night we were in an ambulance. We went to Children's Hospital Los Angeles. 2 days later, they did a biopsy and they confirmed that it was primary liver cancer. The scientific name is hepatocellular carcinoma, and it had spread to her lungs. So she was stage 4, metastatic. And less than a week later, she was doing her first round of chemotherapy.
Mm. Wow. Now, for those of you who are joining us now, we are with Andrea Wilson Woods. We are talking about dying with dignity. We haven't got there yet. We've
Not
just
yet.
heard we've just heard about the story of her and her younger sister. And we have someone with us here who is Monique Pate. I hope I got that right. She says, "Whoa, what an amazing story, Andrea. I can't imagine the challenge of being thrown into parenthood without planning for it." Yeah, that's
Thank you,
quite a challenge.
Monique.
Yeah, thank you, Monique. It's quite a challenge. And then comes the challenge of dealing with a child who is sick.
Yeah,
You love her, but
yeah,
she is diagnosed with something that is terminal.
you're
That's
right.
quite a challenge. How was life from that point on? How were the next few days? How were the next few weeks?
Well, that initially she was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and to get through the biopsy, confirming the diagnosis, and then chemotherapy, and then they actually kept her in the hospital just a couple of extra days. We probably could have gotten out at 10 days, but it was really critical that I, as her parent, learned to do certain things that I was going to have to do when we got home. And I will say Children's Hospital did a very good job of training parents. I mean, I went to many, many classes, and they would not discharge her until they were confident that I would be able to do what needed to be done at home. So
Mm-hmm.
she had a port in her chest. Some people call that a central line, but basically it's a direct access to be able to give her drugs. And so, but part of the problem is you have to take very good care of that port. And so I had to learn how to flush those lines daily. I had to learn how to change the dressing on the port entry. We had to do that twice a week. I had to learn how to change the caps. I mean, it was all this stuff. And then I also had to be able to give her a shot of Neupogen, which increases your white blood cells. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that they do now while you're going undergoing chemotherapy. And so she had to have that shot every single morning. So I had to learn how to do that as well. And so that first stay was 2 weeks. And then we went home and our kitchen became a pharmacy. It was totally transformed into a pharmacy with a schedule of everything. And then, of course, she was on all these different medications and keeping track of all that. She was so close to the end of her school year, they went ahead and said she didn't need to continue. She had straight A's. 3 weeks was the end of her freshman year, so the timing was good in the sense that we had the whole summer to
Mm,
just focus on getting her through this and getting her well. And I do want to stress though that I really did not understand that there was almost zero possibility that she could make it.
mm,
And her first oncologist was terrible at communicating that. And he said that his way of saying she was dying was, this is what he said: "Now would be a good time to go on a trip. Why don't you take her to Hawaii?" And I was just livid at this guy because I was thinking, well, first of all, if you'd gotten to know her as a patient, you would know she doesn't want to go to Hawaii. She'd always wanted to go to Ireland. And second, who's going to pay for that trip? You? you know, I was living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have
mm,
any extra money. And and so I really could not understand or accept that she was dying. And there was a point where she did know she was dying. And like I said, I just couldn't. I had to live in this very sort of healthy state of denial. And when you're going through that process, it really is day by day. You take it one day at a time.
mm. Wow, it's not easy. And
No.
I can imagine how you receiving that news in a way that could not be the best way was not an easy thing. And again, I always find a challenge of talking to people who are undergoing such challenges. Someone who's going through chemotherapy, someone who's facing a huge challenge in life is not always an easy. You have a challenge of choosing the words that you want to tell that person. So and receiving them, it takes some strength, some courage to accept whatever comes and continue facing life in a positive manner.
Yeah.
Now, what was your most support? What was the biggest support that made you keep going at that point?
What was the biggest what?
Support. I mean, the courage, the strength that you got to keep on moving
Oh.
and being the Andrea that you were from.
um, well, I'm a overprotective mama bear, so I would have done anything for her.
Okay.
And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't imagine my life without her. I just couldn't even conceive of not having her in my life.
Mm,
And to to go through that depression with her when she was suicidal in middle school and to see her come out the other side and to see how well she was doing, I just I wanted that for her.
mm-hmm.
She had a future planned. She was excited about going to college and she had all these dreams. And it's interesting because I can look back now and see that she made a bucket list. And she didn't call it a bucket list, but she did. And she decided that she was going to do everything she possibly could, every dream that she ever wanted to do, as long as she had the strength to do it. And I supported her, but it wasn't my idea. So, for example, her favorite musician was Dave Navarro from Jane's
Mm-hmm.
Addiction. She
Mm-hmm.
adored him. And she found out that he was going to be on The Tonight Show the following month and in June. And The Tonight Show at that time was filmed in Burbank, California, literally down the street from where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her boyfriend ended up getting tickets to The Tonight Show, and they did it. And so we went to The Tonight Show. We met Jay Leno, who's a wonderful man, and I wish him well at this time. I know he's going through some serious health issues himself right now,
Mm-hmm.
and and he made sure that she met Dave Navarro, who is also just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And that was a dream of hers. And and there were other dreams as well. Some of them were smaller, like she wanted to go to this very specific ballet, and we went and we had orchestra seats, front row. Um, and then she also decided to do a Make a Wish Day. And again, that was her idea. I wrote the letter, but she told me
Mm,
what to write. And so for her Make a Wish Day, she got to see Dave Navarro again. And first, we went to this restaurant that she wanted to go to that I'd never heard of. She was a real foodie. She used to watch the Food Network. And so we went to this restaurant. And then she got a private concert from Dave Navarro, who was about to embark on a solo tour. It was just amazing. And she made all of these things happen. And so I think she knew she was dying, and she tried to pack as much as she could in a very, very short amount of time. And that's
mm,
something that we could all learn from, and that I
mm.
certainly learned from her.
Wow, wow. Now, it shows that you had such intimate times with her.
Yeah,
And these are stories that you tell us. But I also learned that you wrote a book. Tell us
I
about the
did.
book.
Yeah, the book is Better Off Bald: A Life in 147 Days. And oh, look at you, Anthony. You're amazing. You're on top of it. Available wherever you get your books online. You can also go to betteroffbald.com if you want to buy it from me personally and get it autographed. And it's a medical memoir, and it's about raising and losing Adrienne to liver cancer. And it's written like a journal. And I did it that way because I kept a medical diary while she was sick. And so I wrote down every single day of her illness and what was going on. But also, Adrienne was an incredible writer, and she had an online journal that she started long before she got sick, and she continued to write in it while she was sick. And so you get to see by day 3 her point of view. I open the chapters with direct quotes from her writing. And I think it's really good for people because you see the patient's point of view and then the parents slash caregiver's point of view. And there was this moment in August after her 4th round of chemo where I thought, "Oh my god, she has to be getting better," because everything went smoothly, like nothing went wrong. Nothing. It was
Mm,
amazing. And we were in and out of the hospital in a couple of days. She wasn't in any pain whatsoever. I now know that that often happens when someone's dying, where they have this moment where things look amazing and the pain's gone. That's not unusual. And it kind of signifies that the end is near. But I didn't know that. And she, though, in her journal at that time, which I never read her journal while she was alive to respect her privacy, she knew she was dying.
mm,
She knew in that moment. And so you see that happen in the book where we have very different points of view. And she came to a place of acceptance, and I did not.
mm,
And so you really see both points of view, but you also get all the details. I don't leave anything out, so it is really heavy in medical terminology, but I feel like I explain it well, and you
mm,
really get the sense of what it's like to go through this and lose someone you love so much.
mm. And is her journal where you take the phrase "dying with dignity"? Because I know this is something you're passionate about. Dying
Very
with
passionate
dignity.
about.
What is it about dying with dignity? Now dive us into it.
Well, I don't know anyone who wants to die in a hospital, right?
Hmm.
No one. And I'm really speaking about the US here, but I think that's sort of a universal thing. No one wants to die in a hospital hooked up to a respirator, unable to speak for themselves. And two things we all have in common: we are all born and we're all going to die. Even Jack Dorsey is going to die. I know he doesn't think he will, but he is going to die at some point.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there was this moment with Adrienne where she took a very bad turn for the worse, and we were in the hospital. This was in October, and the doctors wanted me to put her on a respirator. Not because she wasn't able to breathe on her own, she was, but she was only taking a couple breaths per minute, 4 breaths per minute. And the average respiration rate for a healthy individual is 15 to 20 breaths per minute, to give you an
Hmm.
example.
Hmm.
And they were very concerned that she would stop breathing. And I went through all the questions with them, and this was after 36 hours of no sleep, and we had been from one hospital transferred to the other hospital. I mean, it was a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
she was not awake, but she was breathing on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they told me that if I put her on a respirator, I couldn't take her home, I said no. And they pushed back hard. And this is where you, as the caregiver, when a patient can't speak for themselves, whether you're the spouse or in my case, the parent, you have to advocate for the patient.
Mm.
And they said, if you don't put her on a respirator, if you take her home, she might die in the ambulance. And I said, okay, that's a risk I'm willing to take. And I had to sign off on all these papers. I also signed a DNR, do not resuscitate. And I told them, I said, I know you think she's going to die, but she's not going to die. I'm going to get her home and she will die at home,
Mm-hmm.
but I need to get her home. And so they said, finally, they agreed. They didn't really have a choice. It was my decision. But as part of the process of taking her home, they wanted to put a catheter in her. And again, keep in mind, she has not been conscious or fully awake for a day and a half at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctors step out, and it's just me and two female nurses, and they're about to put a catheter in her. And this is what happened, kid you not. So they start to put the catheter in her, and she shoots up. She wakes up and she yells, "Make them stop, sissy." And the nurses just, you would have thought they had seen a ghost. And she clamped her legs together so they couldn't put a catheter in her. She
Mm-hmm.
swung her legs out of bed. She grabbed her IV pole. She said, "I have to go to the bathroom." And she goes to the bathroom and she won't let me help her.
Whoa.
And then she comes back in, and the doctors heard the commotion, as well as some of my closest friends who were there. And so she gets back in bed after going to the bathroom and she pulls the sheet over herself, and everybody comes streaming in. And the doctor who told me to put on a respirator, who told me she was going to die, he was weeping silently. Just
Mm-hmm.
just tears pouring down his face. He couldn't believe it. And
Mm-hmm.
Adrienne looked around and she just said, "I don't know what all the fuss was about. I was just dreaming." And she was. And so all the way home in the ambulance, she said, "What happened? Really? I lost a day and a half. What happened?" And so that was October 7th, the morning of October 7th. I got her
Mm-hmm.
home. She did need to stay on oxygen. We made that happen. And she died at home 2 days later on October 9th in the evening, not hooked up to anything other than oxygen. And she was surrounded by people who loved her. So
Mm-hmm.
it was incredible. And that's what I mean by dying with dignity. And it still wrecks me to my core that I wasn't able to save her. It really does, even though I know I did everything I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
But I am really proud that I gave her a good death. But I had to fight to make that happen. And you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have to fight that hard, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But I gave her a good death. She died in her bed peacefully. Um, it was amazing, really was.
Mm. Okay, I get it, and we all get it. That's dying with dignity, not under circumstances that you don't like to be in, but in the places and surrounded by those people that you love.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was good of you, and we appreciate you, and we thank you for standing out for her to the very last minute. And yes, all that is written in the book, isn't it?
Yes. It's all
Yes. So,
there.
so just as a reminder, go get the book, Better Off Bad, A Life in 147 Days. Yeah, by Andrea Wilson Woods. And
You may
read.
cry, but I promise you will laugh too. There's a lot of humor in the book as well.
Yeah, okay, we would love to go and find out more. And if people want to connect with you or follow you up for more stories, because we see you are a good storyteller, how can they?
Well, the book, betteroffbald.com, and then my personal website is AndreaWilsonWoods.com. Pretty simple. You can find me
Okay,
anywhere.
Yeah, so go to www.andreawilsonwoods.com and connect with Andrea and
Yeah,
get
please do.
to, yes. And this is almost the end of this show. We really appreciate you taking your time. We appreciate every viewer who's been here and those who have given us feedback. We appreciate you and thank you very much. Also, those who get to watch or listen to us after we are through, we appreciate you for your time too. And now, before we sign off, we would like to hear a few words that you would always want us to remember. Which are they, Andrea?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to share the best piece of advice that I've ever been given that I didn't appreciate the time, but I definitely do now.
Mm-hmm.
There's this idea that we should treat people the way we want to be treated. I think it's called the golden rule, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that works. And the best advice I've ever been given, and some people call it the platinum rule, is to treat people the way they want to be treated.
Ah.
And it's very different because there was a moment, for example, with my sister where I dragged her to this support group and she didn't want to be there. And I realized later that I was the one that needed support because there weren't any support groups for parents at that time. I
Mm.
was looking for support. So I should have treated her the way she wanted to be treated. And that is one of the things during her cancer journey that I regret because it was really upsetting for her. And I would leave that with your listeners and to really think about what that means to treat people the way they want to be treated.
Mm. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Treat people the way they want to be treated,
Right.
not the
Not
way you want to be treated.
not the way you want to be treated.
Wow. Thank you for those words. We really appreciate. And it's been such a wonderful time together with you here.
Oh,
Thank you.
Anthony, thank you. It's been
Yeah.
fantastic.
So, for all of you who's watching, who are listening to us, this has been Now Tell Us. And I have been your host, Anthony Murore. And together with Andrea Wilson Woods, we are saying bye for now. Bye.